Hello, I'm Jonathan Bowman-Perks and welcome back to my favourite time of the week. And as part of the Inspiring Leadership series, I am delighted to have an old friend of mine, Peter Holliday. And Peter has had a wealth of experience both in the armed forces and outside. I was lucky enough to serve with him in 2nd Division Signal Regiment, and he was one of the best troop commanders I've ever seen. I learnt a lot from him. And also we met each other again at Staff College. He's an avid climber. He just takes on things that I'd be scared shitless to do, and Peter climbs them. But also he's fabulous at change and strategy, where he's been invited into many of the clients that I've met, and indeed I recommended him because he was so good, doing strategy and change at top exec level with vice chancellors and with CEOs. And now he's at LAMDA as an executive director at LAMDA, working alongside the CEO in a fascinating role. So Peter, great to have you on board.
Great, thank you very much for having me.
We were talking earlier about it's really important to have a reason why and a sense of meaning and purpose in what you do. As you look at what you're doing now and what you've done in different jobs in business, but also in your time in the army, what is it that gives you meaning and purpose in your life? And are you living your life on purpose, or have there been times when you've been off purpose?
Yeah, I think, for me, and I've been sort of out of the army for slightly longer than I was in it now, so about 20 years doing each. And so you try and join the dots between what you're doing in the army and what your kind of second career, your second life is about. And I think I've kind of resolved that it's about change, actually, change in organisations, and that's something I think the forces are used to all the time, facing different organisations and learning to adapt. So that's what I've tried to do, take that into Civvy Street.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, you've worked for some really inspiring leaders over the time, and we were talking about some of them. We talked about just 4. Perhaps you could just briefly mention 2 and then tell some stories about the other 2. So,
sure, yeah.
Who's inspired you?
Yeah, well, there's been lots of people actually over the years. I've worked, with and for some great individuals, and but I mean John Griffin, who you know well because you and I both worked for him in the position of adjutant, and John, very deliberative guy, very principled, and I think that the same for Gordon Hughes that succeeded him at 2nd Signal Regiment.
He was great
as well. Just staying with the military theme for a moment, Cedric Delves. I think he's just released an audio book actually.
All right, cool.
Cedric,
he was Special Forces, wasn't
Special Forces, sort of legendary type commander. But he really inspired me by what he didn't do actually.
Right.
I mean, I was on an exercise with 7th Gurkha Rifles. I was the operations officer with the command group, and it was a live firing exercise, and we had an accident. So a couple of mortar rounds landed in the lead company, and we had some Gurkhas that were injured. And Cedric Delves, as the commander of 5 Airborne Brigade, was with us with the command group, watching things going on, really in an observer capacity. And in that kind of crisis situation, I think a lot of senior commanders may have jumped in and taken control. He was very calm, very measured, and really let us and the commanding officer, David Willis, get on with it and sort it out. So it was more by what he didn't do.
Yeah, that's a good example. And then you also had an academic.
Yeah, absolutely. Lifelong, not lifelong, but certainly, the last 20 odd years, a real friend and mentor, Professor Sir Diane Hopkin. I worked with Diane for several years at London South Bank University, where we had quite a challenging change agenda. Yeah. Quite pressured at times. Yeah. And irrespective of the pressures, Diane could speak to everybody individually and make them feel that they were the only person that really mattered in the organisation. So, because special quality.
That is a real skill. Which I remember meeting Diana. She had that ability to do it, and he clearly had it. People never forget it, do they? They just they always remember. Aspire.
Diana, I had same experience when she visited us in the pool. Actually, very memorable. Yeah.
And so from the inspiring leaders that you've worked with, back to our own practical things, each of us have made mistakes. I think in the tally, I probably made way more than you.
I doubt it.
No, I think I have. I've lost count. But when you look back at leadership mistake, particularly a story that you made, what was your learning from that, and how could you pass on to others? Hey, look, don't make the mistake I made, because it's really not a smart one. What was the error you were making?
So I was what in the army is called an independent subunit commander, so quite a lot of responsibility at a fairly young age for a squadron of 150 or so guys. And I'm sure I made mistakes there. I can think of a few, and when I think about why I made those mistakes, I think decision making clearly is a key part of leadership, and I'm really interested in decision making in terms of when you make the decision. And there's a balance to be struck between procrastination and making a decision too late, and going too early when actually you haven't got sufficient information to make an informed judgment. And I think in those years, probably one or two times where I made decisions under pressure from other people to make a decision, when in my gut I probably knew that I should have pushed back, waited, taken the pressure, and decided when I knew more.
Yes, yeah. It is such a fine line, isn't it? You wait too long, and you're indecisive.
Yeah.
But always, I think, particularly in an environment which is more action oriented, like the military, they want, go on, make a decision, quick.
Yeah.
And you haven't sometimes got the right amount. It is quite intuitive, isn't it? Sort of choosing the fine line.
Yeah, most definitely.
And what about top tip? What would be a good top tip that you'd share so people that listen perhaps go, I could apply that. I could use that.
Yeah.
From your experience.
I mean, we were talking whether there's a kind of title for the mainstream of this conversation, and I came up with this, strategy, the wonderful everyday.
The wonderful everyday.
The wonderful everyday. And
that was from IKEA, is it?
Yeah, the kind of IKEA ad that's going around. But for me, if strategy is working, then it is permeating into the everyday, and people are aligning what they do with where the organisation's going, because they have a very clear idea of that. And if you can do that, I think you're kind of cooking on gas. And how do you know you're doing that? I think when you're in meetings, and rather than people just listening or doing as directed, they're starting to spark and come up with ideas that is in line with where the organisation needs to go. So, and I think leadership is about kind of creating the conditions to enable people to do that.
Yeah, fantastic, Peter. Thank you. It's great having you in the series.
Yeah,
you are a real live action man. I always remember when 249 Air Mobile, you were out there in the snow, weren't you?
And a lot of Arctic
you
stuff.
You love the outdoor world.
I do. Not so much nowadays, but still now and again.
Yeah, but great admiration for all that you've achieved in your career, and just the way you show up as a really authentic leader and an inspiring leader, which is why I wanted you on the series. So thank you.
Thank you very much.